Hey everyone, welcome back to the PC Perspective Podcast. We're at episode 745. It's October 18, 2023. I'm Sebastian Peak.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
Despite what you may have heard, this is not AI generated. I'm Brett Van Spernberg.
And I am certainly not artificial or intelligent. I'm Kent Burgess.
Although you can't see our hands. You know how AI struggles with fingers
It's
and
true.
hands? So to prove to you that this is not AI generated, I will show you my completely normal looking hands and fingers. You can find out how to support us financially by going to patreon.com/PCPer. You type that into your web browser. You can use your phone. You can use your computer. And then you just click, support or whatever the button's called. And just pay us as much as you can, as often as you can. And it will help us.
The bar is set relatively low for a special message from Josh. So
Yeah, anything. Just
jump right
You want to mention, you want your name here, then you just go ahead and, subscribe. Or,
It's all
to
much
Patreon.
appreciated for the folks who continue to do so. So thank you very much.
Yes, you're keeping the lights on. You're keeping the RGB lights on. We actually have the return of the true burger of the week.
Yes.
It is. I actually got one this week. They had another mac and cheese special. It was a sweet chili mac and cheese, and I just couldn't do another mac and cheese. I needed a burger, so I didn't have a burger special. But I'm told there are more coming. But for now, I got the Plainsman. I've had this one before, and it's truly a spectacular one. It's a little messy, as you can see, and I tried to pull the top off, but it was just, too squished in its wrapper, and it just didn't want to be presented without tearing it apart. And I didn't want to tear it apart. But what you see is a single smashed patty, smashed into onions, covered with roasted green chilies, topped with a generous portion of American cheese, and on top of that, a chipotle ketchup. Truly, it is a simple masterpiece of a burger. Very tasty. And of course, I haven't eaten dinner because I don't need to after that giant mess. But the new buns are great. Just letting you know. And the fries were primo this time.
Let's move to the PC Perspective news desk. And our top story is, of course, Intel 14th gen. I mean, people can't stop talking about this.
It's like the second coming.
Second coming of the 13th gen, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
If you haven't watched it, by the way, check out Gamers Nexus review of, I think it was the i7 14700K, where he did his ridiculous
did, yes. He
intro
did.
with the lens flare and the plant. It was very good. And
Many different
actually,
angles.
We had our hands on a 14700K via a Falcon Northwest Talon that Kelt and the gang at Falcon were kind enough to send in advance so we could do some testing and check it out. And honestly, this is the one interesting processor of the 14th gen because it's the only one that really changes. It's got more E-cores, more L3 cache compared to the previous i7. Everything else is pretty much the same, except the 13900KS is called the 14900K now. Which honestly, and Kent, let's talk about this because I know you're a 13900KS owner, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It was a little bit more expensive when it launched compared to the non-KS. And it was limited run. It's not easy to find. It hasn't been easy to find for months. When I did,
Right.
the last time I went looking for it, people were asking $900 to $1,000 for it on eBay.
Yep.
And now you can buy the mainline 14900K and get the same thing, except it's actually just a little bit faster. I wonder if that comes down to them just improving the thermal interface material or what they did, but I did a bunch of testing with the 14900K versus the 13900KS over the last couple of days, and it's consistently just a little faster than the KS for some reason.
From what I saw, and I actually looked at several different reviews, and it was definitely, the 14900K was definitely faster than the 13900K. And it was maybe 1 to 2% faster in some situations and some testers than the 13900KS. I saw a couple of reviews where it was almost identical. Now they have added a new thing where they can adjust the throttling voltage by core now, which is new.
Yeah.
But I think they have improved the efficiency somewhat, just based on, taking all of the reviews I've seen and mashing them together. It seems like it's maybe just a little better than the 13900KS.
So if you were on the fence about that KS, or if you missed your window to buy it at its original MSRP, rejoice, because you're getting a slightly refined, massaged version of the KS. And you can
At a
just
reasonable
buy.
price.
Yeah, it's under 600, I think, is the MSRP. Yep. So if you want to go Intel, just ignore those 7800X3D benchmarks. They don't exist. Just stay on an Intel platform, and the K, it's got it. And actually, the Core i7 for gaming, it's very close. I did some of those gaming kind of CPU scaling benchmarks a little bit, but you will see in a moment. I will quickly cover the Talon, though, because this is a new design. I did not realize this before I was informed. This is slightly different than the last time I looked at a Talon. It looks the same in pictures until you start to look at the back. There's an option to have an additional 80 millimeter intake fan, and it feeds air directly in to that intake fan on the bottom of the 40 series.
Okay.
Seems clever.
As long as you're not using those expansion slots, that fan, it takes the place of a few of them down at the bottom there, but it's optional.
But I won't be able to use my sound card.
That's what I said. Like in the review, I said, I'm that weirdo who still thinks, PCIe sound card and PCIe capture card, but most people wouldn't be affected by that at all.
No.
So
That might breeze over your SSD heatsink too.
I had been looking at doing that in a chassis recently, as having a fan positioned there as an intake to bring air in. And I'd ended up water cooling that system, so it wouldn't have affected it any. But I think that's a great idea. I'm glad that someone has jumped on it, and someone that has a much better reputation than I do.
your builds are awesome, but I mean, do you look at this? Look at these cables, though. Look at these cable mod individually sleeved cables.
So neat. You got two takes here. You got kind of the build and the Falcon Northwest as a whole, but what did you think of the CPU? Tell us more about the 14th gen.
I will in a second. Calm down. We all need to
All
appreciate this ATX cable. Look at this.
Yeah.
The arc of the cable. It's really remarkable. But we've looked at Falcon Northwest systems before. We know what it's all about.
It's bloody perfect.
Let's get to the specs of the system. It was the Core i7 14700K, a 4090 Founders Edition on an Asus Strix board. Interesting, they went with 96 gigabytes, so two 48 gigabyte modules. And these were pretty fast for that capacity. DDR5 6400 CL32.
Oh.
Nice.
And Gen 5 storage, because, why not? Here's some basic tests. I just ran a few on Intel processors because I don't have the X3D.
KS.
I don't have the X3D. Although I've been trying to fake one. We'll talk about that later, maybe. So the 14900K just ahead of the KS somehow, just slightly.
But it's so negligible.
Yes, but it's there.
Okay.
The 14700K a little bit behind, obviously has fewer cores. This is a 8P core and then 12E cores. So it's 20 total cores. So it's 4 cores fewer than the 900K. And if you look at, these aren't really gaming tests. They're just like synthetic scenarios to see if there's any CPU scaling. Time Spy, again, the 700K, a little bit slower than the 900K. Clock speeds are the issue there. If you want the 6 gigahertz, that will give you the absolute highest Intel CPU performance in a gaming benchmark like this, you're going to have to get the 900K, because the 14700K only goes up to 5.6 gigahertz with Turbo Boost 3.0 technology. Turbo Boost Max 3.0. Here's Cyberpunk, 192.5 frames per second on average with no image scaling at 1080 high for the 14900K. The KS, essentially 189.5. So you're getting 3 frames per second better at 1080 high with the 4090, which is pretty exciting stuff.
4 frames at the 1% low. I think you left out the big numbers.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, yeah, it's just better.
Yeah.
Look at that. Look at that performance, and not at all a rounding error. Actually, the 14900K and the 13900 KS were both tested on the same motherboard with the same memory, same OS install, everything. So there's a real difference, a negligible one, but it's real.
Well, Metro's the interesting one, because that's one of the 2 games that supports the Intel application optimization, which, as you can see, does huge amounts of things.
Well, yeah, you're gaining like 2 to 3 frames per second.
Well, I do see the 1% low as actually 13900 KS has slightly beaten the 14900K.
Not appearing on this chart, and it was too late for me to put it on, but last night I finally came up with the results with the 7950 X3D that we have. I went into the BIOS and disabled the CCD that does not have the 3D cache on it, and I went ahead and ran some gaming benchmarks after verifying that indeed it was just an 8-core CPU with 96 megabytes of L3. And it was staggering. It was so much faster than these numbers that I was like, no, FSR was on. No, DLSS was on. No. Because like in Cyberpunk, it went from 192 to like 223.
Oh my.
Like, oh, okay. Well, Metro, that's more GPU bound for sure. And then Metro was basically the same story. So it's like, oh, this is significantly faster at 1080 high, which is the consensus if you look anywhere that tested that CPU as well. It's the X3D is still beating him. It's the gaming CPU to get. The 7800 X3D has replaced the 5800 X3D as the go-to ultimate gaming CPU. Josh, didn't you just finish a build with that CPU?
Yeah, I helped some friends build one that they a couple of weeks ago they got a hold of me, and a couple of months, and I had spec'd out an X3D 5800 X3D for them, and they didn't buy, and then they came back and was like, well, are there any other better deals? And I thought, well, that was a nice time to do the 7800 X3D, and other than the motherboard is MSI Mag 670p Wi-Fi, I think it is, and the BIOS is a little bit older, even the latest one on the site. It was August, but still installed that. Excuse me. And other than kind of a slow initial boot, if you go from cold and dark, push the power button, it may take 25 seconds for it to actually get to that kind of initial BIOS screen. But once there, it just was seamless and easy to install everything, and everything ran, and games were glorious, and they were just so ecstatic. What's that?
The memory training went well.
Yeah, apparently it did. So they ran 1.35 volt 6000 from G-Skill. That is what is their Epics? I can't remember what the stinking
Trident Z.
Yeah. No. I'm talking about the memory training that AMD does, that they have it.
Oh, Expo.
Is that called Expo?
That's it.
Yep. So that it did, went up to the speed it was supposed to, and they've been loving it. They liked it so much they decided to upgrade the other computer as well to something very similar, except with a 4090. Must be nice to have money.
And it's not going to be
looking
held
at
back.
you, Kent. Yeah, it is not.
By the way, the 14th gen, this is the first time in many years that you've been able to use the same motherboard for 3 generations of Intel CPU products.
Wow.
They don't tend to do that.
No. And the last time was X299 because there was the 10980XE.
Sure.
And that was a rebranded, price-reduced 9980XE. So kind of the same story here because they re-released the 13900KS at a lower price. They called it 14th gen.
I think DeBauer said in his video that the last time it was actually 3 truly different generations was socket 775.
I thought you were going to say socket 7, but those glory days are gone. The ability to buy one board and use any manufacturer's CPU, what an amazing time to be alive.
That's it. Let's go back to slockets.
Very quickly to wrap this up. The one kind of interesting thing about this is even though there's only a slight performance drop with the i7 versus the i9 in any kind of gaming workload, even all cores at 100% in a workload like Blender, it's only pulling about 250 watts instead of 320 plus, which is what you get with the i9. So it is more energy efficient because there are fewer cores and it has lower clock speeds. So that's the magic formula. You want to have Intel 13th or 14th gen with lower power, just lower the clocks. And also, the voltage. And
per core throttling.
That's useful. It's interesting. I should look into that more, but there's just so little interest out there in this launch that unless you're clever and funny like Gamers Nexus was, I don't think you're going to create very compelling content about this.
So going off someone else's review and talking about Steve here, so he got about the same results of you for that 14700, right? Give or take, if you remember.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. The 7800 X3D was running at half that, like 125 watt.
Oh yeah, the power draw was amazingly different. Yeah.
That's just silly. It's silly what AMD is doing, and it's awesome. So
the Talon, very impressive system, of course. The build is second to none. The processor itself, I was unable to come up with any kind of award level for it, so I invented the More E-Cores award. So I bestow our first ever More E-Cores award, which I didn't have a graphic for, on the Core i7 14700K.
Well, you could also add a thank you for not cranking the price up on a refresh.
Yeah, they're not in any position to do that.
Well, that's fair, but that doesn't mean they wouldn't.
Right.
So it's nice to see they didn't.
So what is this about MSI increasing?
Well, first of all, the graphic
I thought you were going to say
great.
Reducing. Okay, it's increasing the throttling temp of the CPU to 115.
If 100 was good, if 100 was good, why not allow 115 to eke out all the highest scores?
Because it'll set your dinosaur on fire.
So MSI's got a absolutely fresh BIOS update for, I believe it's their 600 series. Oh no, sorry, 790s. In order to take your 14th gen CPU to 115C TJ Max, so they won't throttle you until you hit that unbelievably high temperature. This is just the board people are going to need to set the highest scores.
Wasn't it enough? Go ahead, Ken. Sorry.
So the interesting thing about that is if you go back and look at the Intel specs page, the 12900KS TJ Max from Intel was listed at 115, which was very interesting that they did that at that point. And as a couple of reviews I read at the time stated, if this can go to 115, that sort of means that the rest of 12th gen can do it as well. I don't really recommend it, but it's interesting that Intel did list that processor at 115 degrees.
For 14th gen, you said 12th.
Well, that's what it was 12900KS, so the other 12th gen could do that as well. And it seems
makes sense because there has been no architectural change since 12th gen.
Right.
So
right.
All right. Well, that's just insane. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but I mean, higher clocks.
you think your spinal tap
High
longer?
scoreboards. High
Well,
scoreboards.
right. If you're doing liquid
thermal
nitrogen
headroom.
cooling,
Yes, absolutely.
that's exciting. Okay, let's talk
If you're
about
doing
AMD.
liquid nitrogen, though, you would never come close to those temps.
No.
Well, no, of course not.
No.
So I guess it's pointless. Let's talk about AMD.
Oops.
So we talked about AMD Anti-Lag Plus being introduced with a recent driver update, and there's
You're
you may have
cheating.
noticed some stories and some social media posts about people being banned for using these new drivers in multiple games, most famously Counter-Strike 2. So AMD's response was to pull it, and they have a new driver, 23.10.2, which removes Anti-Lag Plus.
Yes.
From
It
all
also
titles.
it fixes the issue it's been having with Chromium style browsers, where all of a sudden the screen just stops responding. The system
that's
is still
harsh.
fine. You're not cranking up any workload. It just stops working. You hit Control-Alt-Delete and you're back to perfect. But yeah, Credge and Chrome were having some issues on certain list systems, like mine, until you did the 20.10 or 23.10.
The reason
If you're having
behind this
issues.
turns out to be somewhat interesting in that they were actually modifying the DLL either in memory or on disk.
Yes, they were.
To wedge
Naughty.
in this anti-lag, and this was clearly a reason why the anti-cheat was kicking on, because modifying DLLs and drivers is a classic way of doing cheats. So I'm sort of fascinated by why AMD felt they needed to do a runtime change to a either in-memory DLL or an on-disk DLL. Why didn't they just compile it properly to be able to do like runtime switching in code versus a self-modifying mechanism? So I'm sort of like interested as to why they did that.
Storage is cheap. Programmers aren't.
I mean, how
True,
long did
but
FSR3 take to, make it after announcement? So they're still just catching up.
It was not ready. The one thing that came from this for me was actually having to study and learn a little bit about the difference between what NVIDIA does and what AMD does. And apparently NVIDIA's is a completely separate library and has nothing to do with altering the game engine itself.
Yeah, this is hacked in at runtime. Oh, I said it. I said it hacked in. I meant that. That's exactly what they were doing.
This wasn't nefarious, and people were. I don't know. I struggle with this idea of how do you if you want to cut down on any and all lag, it at some point bypassing certain elements of the game engine would get you more direct access to control. But why don't you just bring in some of that magical negative latency? Just do predictive image.
Yeah.
We
figured that out
Google was
years
the
ago.
master at that.
Harness the power of AI.
They have slunk back into the shadows. Now, was this just flipping a few bits in order to direct the hardware to do something specialer? Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So they have egg on their face, at least in the, gamer community. People have been posting about this for days now, but it's gone. Anti-Lag Plus hopefully gets rebooted and they come up with a new solution. But I don't see any way for them to use the technology they've developed ever again. They have to start over.
Now, why don't they just come up with a real
to go
driver?
anti-lag plus.
Yeah. By 14th gen, they'll have it really.
A real driver would have solved this problem. A real driver that incorporated code paths that legitimately figured out which way to go would have been the. Okay,
You sound
Jeremy's
really
already
dismissive. What do you mean a real driver, Brett?
A real driver. But Jeremy's making the same joke he made 5 minutes ago, which is programmers are expensive.
All right, let's move to the next news story, which is that Microsoft is backing off on OneDrive gallery storage.
Well, you'd figure that they would have learned from previous decisions to try and make something that was totally free into something that is paid for. But they don't. They never do. So the free version of OneDrive, which if you've ever plugged USB device into your computer recently, you've noticed that it immediately sucks every single picture it can possibly do off of it unless you cancel it or constantly disable it because it re-enables every time my OneDrive updates. So Microsoft, for the longest time, has just said, the OneDrive gallery doesn't count against your 5 gig free. And then they also started, uploading attachments automatically if you're using free Outlook so that the attachment is no longer in your email client. It's on your OneDrive. So what this means is that a lot of people are skirting that 5 gig limit just because they get emails. And by making it so that the OneDrive gallery now counts against your storage limit, people would immediately be over. So no more backing up and constant emails about, hey, why don't you sign up for this sale? Or, you can just pay for the whole year. It's a little bit cheaper than what it would be if you did it month by month, yada, yada, yada. And so it's been a few months now, and the deadline was October 16th when this flip was going to happen. Well, on the 13th, they suddenly changed their mind. We received some negative responses to our communications as of how we were going to be changing the OneDrive. So, yeah, they kind of realized that a lot of people were just going to say, you know what? You just annoyed me. There are 1,000,001 cloud backup providers out there, half of which I'm signed up for whether I want to be or not. So why don't I just get rid of you and go to one of those that isn't going to provide this wonderful benefit? So yeah, no worries anymore. It's for now. Give them a year or two, they'll probably change their minds and try it again. But yeah, it's
they will figure this out eventually. No, they will figure out a way to get you eventually.
When you subscribe to Windows as a service, eventually, yes.
Oh, absolutely.
How big of a hard drive do you want? Because you're paying per month for your virtual hard drive.
Yes. As we all should.
Yes. Would you like to download a faster processor?
Download more RAM. It's real.
It will become real, yes.
It will happen, and I hate it.
What slice of this VM do you want to pay for? Because
Exactly.
you'll virtualize the hardware and the software. It's perfect.
Yep.
They're wearing away the difference between what's virtual and what's local. So
We're all
you're right.
going back to dumb terminals. We're literally all going back to dumb terminals. It's going to happen.
They were ahead of their time 50 years ago.
They were wise.
Our next article, this one comes from Windows Central. Exclusive. Windows 11 is active on almost 500 million devices, ahead of Microsoft's expectations. This almost sounds like PR.
It does sound like PR. It's a little bit behind Windows 10, however.
Oh,
It's still
Adoption
yeah.
rate. Windows 10 had a faster adoption rate.
Okay.
But perhaps that was just because there was free upgrades from 7s and 8s.
it was because of the start menu. It was, okay, Windows 10
Why?
was
We
the
all
new
know.
Coke debacle all over again. This is my conspiracy theory. They come out with Windows 8. It's new Coke. It's the new start experience.
8.
The whole screen.
8
People were falling over themselves to install these third-party tools to bring back the start menu. And then Windows, they cave. Like, Windows 10 is going to be a free upgrade, guys. We brought back the start menu. Yes! Amazing. The adoption, the forced adoption with Windows 10 was unparalleled. Windows 11, underwhelming. Look, I've already got my start menu back. I don't care. It's like DVD versus
But no, it's
Blu-ray.
Apple.
I've already got DVD. I don't need, what is this Blu-ray? I don't care. It's another disc. DVD's good enough.
Apple start menu now. It's in the center for one thing.
Yeah.
Well, I think also another part of it is that we all knew the teething experience of Windows 10, where we were essentially beta testers, and so it's taken a while for Windows 11 to reach this point, but not nearly. Yeah, we all learned our lesson.
But
they're getting activations of 400 million monthly activations now. So apparently, Windows
They're selling new
11
PCs. New companies
is
are
now
selling
for
new PCs.
everyone.
The biggest problem with adoption of Windows 11 was the TPM requirement.
From 2018 boards forward. So
yes,
that's your issue right there. I agree.
I mean,
not all of
we're
my
finally
machines here
starting
can
to
even
move.
run 11. So I don't care.
No, we finally hit the point where now we're starting to move towards Windows 11 at work because, this year kind of slowed us down because not much purchasing, but we're finally to the point where enough of our deployed hardware is beyond 2018 that it actually kind of makes sense, because otherwise you'd be supporting one small little group and then a big group as opposed to being able to spread it out.
So
But yeah, that's kind of sad.
Microsoft's next trick in 2024 sometime is
Windows
it Windows
12?
12? Is it 12 or is it 11 dot something? Or
I don't think they're doing the
whatever.
dot again. I think that was just because they
Okay.
wouldn't release a 9.
Maybe they'll
8.1?
take a note from a bunch of video games that have been released recently, and it'll just be Windows.
Oh, yes.
Nice call, Jeremy.
It could happen.
Yeah, it'll never
think
have
it
a
hit
number
for it,
again.
but-
It'll just be Windows.
What's the story, Jeremy? Give me the narrative. We could be creating the marketing for them.
I mean, if they follow the method of their own gaming brand, it would be Windows 1.
Or, yes, it could be just Windows 1.
And you didn't. It's not a number. It's ONE.
Correct.
Yes.
Right, because there's already been a Windows 1.
Windows Zone?
The digit 1.
Windows Zone. Yeah, no.
Windows Uno.
Windows On.
I wish that wasn't likely to happen, but I sort of believe in it.
It's...
But I hear
Now I
it'll
wanna-
have a bunch of AI parts in it. That'll be great.
Great, yeah, can't wait. Let's move on to a Josh news story. Josh,
Me?
I know you're a racing enthusiast.
I am a small
there's-
racing enthusiast.
There's a story here about Fanatec?
Yeah, Fanatec.
Oh, sorry.
It's a
Fanatec?
nice German company.
Fanatic. Yeah.
Okay.
Fanatec.
I have heard it
Fanatic.
both ways.
Yeah, me too. But, we're English speakers, so
I
Who
think
knows what
Fanatic
they-
makes more sense.
I apologize for my ignorance.
it's quite all right. So anyway, it looks like the direct drive is just becoming that much more common. I mean, Logitech's got one. Thrustmaster introduced theirs about 8 months ago. And Fanatec had several, some really high-end stuff. And then they got into a lower 5 Newton meter and a boost pack that raised another one up to 8 Newton meters. And those start at $199 when you buy it with a wheel and pedals directly from Fanatec. But they needed something else in between that really high end and the low end stuff. And this is it. It's the Clubsport DD. And it comes in at, I believe, 12 Newton meters. And that's a pretty solid. I mean, the Thrustmaster is, I think, 10 Newton meters. But it's a constant. And this is 12. And it's also a constant. And they're going to have an upgraded one in a couple of months that will have 15 Newton meters of force. They put all kinds of extra little things in there and micro vibrations so that you're getting the big force feel, but then you can also feel like if you're revving the engine, you'll feel the revs behind that. I mean, it's just a lot of technology in there, a lot of software. They've been doing this for years, and it's a nice addition to their lineup. And at $699, it matches the Thrustmaster T-818, which hopefully I should finish that review here in the next 2 weeks, and we can get that posted, because that was a fun one as well. And hopefully Fanatec did contact me. We'll see if I get into a review or not. But I'm not holding my breath, because my luck this year has not been fantastic. But it still would be nice, and it's a nice they've got a new quick release that is super stiff, and it's damn near car grade in terms of how much force you can apply to it. So it's a really nice update for their entire lineup, and only at $699. That's it's tempting if you have a Fanatec ecosystem, and they do have ways to swap out to the older version of the quick release. So it's available with even older rims.
This is next level, Josh. It's not for people who take their steering wheel out of a box.
No.
No.
Well, I
Well,
mean, they do,
but-
but
I mean,
Can
they may.
Can you
start that way.
injure your wrists with these
Yes.
things? Okay.
Yes.
So
yes.
Yep.
Oh.
that level of power. All right.
Yeah, there are people who have noted being 10 to 12 to 15 that they're in a race and they're focused and somebody sideswipes them and they didn't see it coming and did not let go of the wheel and have like sprained wrists or broken fingers or broken
That's
thumbs.
realism. That's realism.
It really
Sacrifice for
is.
your art.
And that's why
well, the
esports
TA-18
belongs in the Olympics.
That's why you
Yes.
get a military
That is
exemption
correct.
for esports in South Korea.
Yeah.
Yes.
But TA-18, the Thrustmaster, it actually has a setting in the driver that you uncheck it and says, I see that this is going to go over 70% of force, and I accept all the risks of me doing this.
Whoa.
So
T818
yeah.
sounds like a killer from the future, by the way. Just reminding
it
me
kind of
that.
does.
Let's move to Security Corner. And our first story is Cisco iOS. And of course, they were the original. We've talked about this before. There's iOS and then there's iOS. iOS XE. Have you tried turning it off and burning it?
People asked for a perfect 10. Well, you got it. Here is a perfect 10.
It's like the second one, though.
Well,
It's the second one in this many weeks.
I know. WSFTP was the other one.
Yep. Which also you should just turn off and burn as well at this point. There are
okay.
other
Yes, please
choices.
continue.
No, this is awful in two ways. One is that this is a day zero exploit which affects anything running the iOS XE software. Now, you do have to expose either the HTTP server or HTTPS server feature to the internet, which is a no-no, but it happens. Sometimes you forget to turn it off. Sometimes you were forced to do it. Sometimes you needed it for a little bit. Cisco figured out that there was something wrong when they noticed some strange traffic and, thousands of switches, and looked into it and said that, there's a day zero out there and we're not quite sure what's going on here. Disable this, but we think that a couple of thousand people maybe have been affected. Well, no, that's complete and utter BS. A couple of places like Shodan, oh no, they can ping over 80,000 infected units. What is the infection? Well, it's complete and utter control over your network because they get in
why
with
it's a
the
10.
highest. Yeah, they get in with the highest level of access, more so than even most admins would have. They can create themselves a local user because if you bounce the switch, that access will go away, but the local user won't. And there's ways to hide that local user because you don't really browse around the local users on a Cisco switch so much. So we're looking at, a huge amount of known infected. God only knows how many unknown infected. And they also didn't mention that the first detection they had was September 18th. So this has been going on for over a month. And Cisco just decided to tell us about it, a couple of days ago, as in like Monday. And essentially they lowballed how many infections there were by almost an order of magnitude. And they sort of lowballed just how bad it was, because then as people are looking into it, once the attacker is in, they can actually exploit a vulnerability which was fully patched 2 years ago. And Cisco's scratching their head about this one because they fully patched it, but yet if this guy gets access to it, they can actually exploit that old CVE to, again, get back into it over and over and over again, even if you bounce it to get rid of the access and find that local user and kill it. So yeah, this is a nightmare, an utter and complete nightmare.
So set it on fire is real.
Yeah, like just burn it because you don't know. At this point, you don't know.
The next story comes from Bleeping Computer. Over 40,000 admin portal accounts use admin as the password.
Say it isn't
That'll probably
so.
also be the username too.
Yeah, username
good
admin,
Lord.
password admin. Yeah.
Say it isn't so.
Oh, it's true. It's so true.
So, the numbers are only 40,000 sounds like a lot.
It seems low.
They took a look at 2 million. 40,000.
There you
That
go.
doesn't seem like so many now, right? Oh, the point here is that so many people rack stuff and connect it to the internet without actually going in and changing the default credentials or setting up something absurdly weak. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as root, or password as
Swordfish.
a password, admin 1, 2, 3. There's an entire chart of these just stupidity, going on and on and on. So if you're a network admin and you have charge of this sort of stuff, just go in and audit your gear and make sure that you're not part of the problem. If you're racking this stuff, for God's sakes, fix it, man. You have responsibility here. Do the right thing. Change the default passwords.
Stop the world. I want to get off.
Yeah, but what's the fun of that? I mean, if you don't have a PF sense and don't keep the default username and password, I mean, why are you even still employed? I mean, everything's going to be fine internally. You gotta. I mean, you're building yourself some job security through insecurity.
My voice is my password. Verify me. Nobody knows where that's from.
Oh, yes, we do.
We do.
You guys do.
Sneakers.
This story comes from Security Week. Microsoft improving Windows authentication, disabling NTLM.
In the feel-good story of the week.
That stands for not
Jeremy,
that lucky mother, right?
Jeremy,
Well, no, it was new technology LAN manager. And it was new technology 20-some years ago. But it hasn't been for a while because it is essentially insecure by design at this point in time. And Microsoft has been begging you to move off of it since, 2014, 2015?
But even today, queries will fall back to it. So
Yep. So they're finally killing it. They're taking it out back and drowning it in the bathwater, and it needs to be done.
Well, what they said is there were a couple of features that were only supported by NTLM, unfortunately. They did always have a choice between, I think it's Kerberos and NTLM, but Kerberos didn't support a couple of features that NTLM did with authentication. They're finally getting around to adding those missing features so they can now kind of do away with NTLM. And the problem with NTLM is they could be brute forced and listened in on, as you were saying. It's insecure by design. So
it wasn't back then, but
for God's sakes, change your password. No, that won't help you.
No, but do it anyways. Just because.
And do it often, because there's always a breach.
But this is an applaud for Microsoft. Microsoft is trying to
this is a good
improve
one.
Something. This is the feel-good story of the week in Security Corner.
Let's move to gaming quick hits. And the first story comes from Ars Technica. Microsoft, of course, has completed their Activision Blizzard deal. $69 billion. I think this started
the only time it's not appropriate to say nice with that number. Because this is bad.
This was more like how do you guys feel about this? I mean, they're owning some really sizable IP now in the gaming space, like a ton of stuff. Microsoft has promised to be nice, especially in the Xbox arena. As well, they have promised to continue things such as what Call of Duty with Sony. That was part of the deal. I don't know. What do you guys think about this?
We'll never get another BattleTech game again.
Okay, that's probably true.
Enough about megacorps. Let's look at humble bundles. Often a great way to get a whole bunch of other games that you'll never play in your Steam library. Or I assume
For
it's
not
Steam.
much money.
Is it Steam?
Yep.
Is it Epic? Okay.
Well, GOG, it depends on how you run your games, but sure.
Yeah, it's usually Steam or GOG.
Hey, Alan Wake,
Alan Wake.
timely. Alan Wake 2 coming soon. So get the original.
And it being around Halloween, if you like horror games and you've never played Alan Wake, get it and play it.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely true. So this is a bunch of sort of like a horror or fright themed games, Tormented Souls, Hidden Deep, Pathologic 2, Moons of Madness, all for $25 or less. So take advantage of a humble bundle and get some scare on for not a lot of cash.
Or if you want something new, don't ever scream. Because this is an amusing game. Yeah, this is an amusing game idea.
Yeah, it's actually, I love this idea.
I think it's a brilliant idea. It's called Don't Scream, because if you do, you start over again.
So this is a really short game, they say, less than 20 minutes for a playthrough. But what the game developers do is they make you tune in and turn on your mic so that they can detect whether you have some sort of muttering or scream or just scare. And if you do, they will reset your play and you need to start over. So it's a short game with an interesting tweak to it.
This seems like it would be rather easy to fool the game.
Maybe not.
Well, like your microphone right there, Brett, you can just tap on it and it mutes itself, but it still presents itself to the OS as an active microphone.
That is true. I imagine you could probably fool it in
That's
that
like
way.
using Anti-Lag Plus in Counter-Strike 2. You just shouldn't.
I actually recommend using Anti-Lag Plus while playing Don't Scream.
However, they probably sample the background noise and take that as a noise floor, and if that ever disappears, they know you've muted your mic.
Oh, okay.
That's what I do if I was programming.
Inject a noise, like a white noise profile. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is a little bit more sophisticated. It's not
hearing that.
Anyway, this game is supposedly scary enough to make you scream. So, dive in. It's that time of year. Don't scream.
You could get like a 20-foot USB cable for your mic and put it in another room.
Make sure you have like a box fan going so it can get
because it wouldn't detect the white noise in the background.
Yeah.
Play a really low or really high frequency and
virtual audio cable as a mic, then loop in some noise.
You go.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
The concept is to become slightly immersed in it and have fun with it. It's a very short game. It's only like
25 minutes to set up, but I can beat this 18-minute game.
Exactly. Well, what if you can't? What if it's so compelling?
You know what? Move on. This game is not for you then.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move to the reviews portion of tonight's show. And I know we already talked about that Falcon Northwest Talon, but let's talk about something for the ears, Jeremy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I'm wearing them right now and plugged into it.
Oh,
Drop, who refuses to just stick with keyboards, although they're very famous for them, have gone to the audio side, to the point where they even make a turntable. Don't know if you knew that or not, but there is a Drop turntable. But what they will do is they'll pair up with another company and make a combo. So in this case, it's the Drop+xDuoo TA-84 vacuum tube amp. And along with it, they sent some Drop and Sennheiser, the HD6XX headphones, which are as open as you can get without actually not having a driver in them. I'll see if I can show you them in a bit. So, hey, this is a very nice OTL, which is output transformerless, tube amp for really high impedance headphones. It's designed for between 100 ohm to 600 ohm. So if you've got low impedance headphones, it's not really worth even playing for. And I'll mention this since the audio listeners, you don't see this picture, but don't touch tubes with your greasy fingers. Tubes get warm. Tubes pop. When you're playing with them, make sure you've got a nice clean cloth or gloves or something. Because otherwise you're going to be a little bit more annoyed than you want to be, because all of a sudden you're listening to something and all of a sudden pop. And vacuum tubes don't go quietly or cleanly. So yeah, take care of them if you're going to play with it. If you do like tubes, the sound of tubes, you're our age and you grew up when the height of rock and roll was going and most of the guitar players were doing tube amps because those are the frequencies that these really, really love, then it's kind of fun to be able to pick one up. They're sort of $400, except they should be going down to about $350 or so. Drop wasn't quite sure apparently whether or not these would be well received, and so they did like this limited run at a low price, and then they went back to pre-order, and they're going to do another run, and if they do well, then they're going to keep going. That makes sense because in the sort of $330 to $400 price range, you do have a lot of competition for tube amps, because tube amps have come back a lot. There are a lot of people that like them. Not only are they sound lovely, if you've never heard a tube amp, you've got a very flat curve. It doesn't do the weird peaks when you're doing digital audio, when it hits a certain range and it just can't cope, and so you get a screech or just a drop. No, this is analog. It doesn't care. And then the other nice thing about them is that they're pretty. I apologize if the mic makes some noise, and I am going to have to turn off a light.
No, it's pretty nice looking. Yeah.
So you can't quite make out all the tubes, but I mean, it is a pretty little thing. Pretty hefty.
Seems like a chunk of metal there.
Yeah, it's probably running around 3 or 4 kilos.
The only thing that would be better is if they were glowing orange.
Well, they are. It's just that I can't get this place to dark enough to be able to show you, because it is a subtle glow. You can see how I tried to capture them with pictures, and also frustrating.
I see it.
Yeah, but you've got a nice glow on the bottom and the top. And what these are is 2 power amp tubes, the EL84s, and 2 preamps, the ECC82s. Now, these are able to be plugged in via USB. And you do not need a driver for anything. You just plug them in, unless you're a very strange person and you're still trying to use a very ancient codec, which honestly, no one needs to use to direct stream digital anymore. So don't worry about the driver. They'll also go in through RCAs. And the interesting thing is that on the back, not only is it a headphone amp, you can also run 2 powered speakers off of this if you want to go that way. You can't do both at once. You got to choose. And again, there's you also have some fairly physical things about this, because, hey, it's a tube amp. So if you're toggling between RCA or USB, there is a toggle on the back. If you are going for the gain, the high-low, also on the back. But honestly, you'll pick one and you'll stick with it. Also has a voltage switch so that you can take it overseas if you so desire. And the knob on it, it's a step potentiometer. It takes a little bit of effort to turn it. It is a very, very nice knob. It's probably one of the best things that Drop did about this thing, because it
has detents as detents.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
It's really nice. Overall, I mean, compared to some of the other, like I say, compared to some of the other things like from Shit and other audiophile companies that are just pure audiophile, you will probably find something a little bit better. On the other hand, for what the pricing that they're charging for it, and just the overall look of it, it's dead simple. It's black metal. It's got 4 glowing tubes on it. It's kind of really nice. And the other thing they sent over was the headphones. And I don't know if you can really see, but it's that open. You can literally see through the thing. My finger is there.
And we're not getting any strange feedback into your mic, actually, either.
No. Oh, that was because I was moving it around. I was worried that I'd knock it. So the Mass Drop Sennheiser HD6XXs are nice. The velour cups are wonderful. It's got a nice firm sit on your head. The padding on the top is great. The overall THD on it is pretty nice. It likes the highs and the lows, but that's sort of to be expected. But the frequency response, except for one little weird drop towards the high end, is pretty much flat, perfect for what you want with this preamp, because you're getting a nice flat sound. And the other fun thing, which I didn't realize about these specific to Drop Sennheiser headphones, is they're essentially completely and utterly user serviceable. If you don't like the drivers or the padding or the outside, you can literally buy parts, pull it apart yourself, and replace it. So I think that's, an interesting addition to a set of headphones that, again, this is borderline audiophile, so they're $220. They're on sale for $200 the last I looked, US. The idea that you can tear them apart, put them back together again, however you want. Any piece of them is kind of nice. So I'm going to say overall, it's been a long time since I've owned a tube preamp. I just don't sort of do it. So at $300, it is a bit of an investment. You get them for $240. Hey, that's pretty nice. And the other thing is that we tried it along with these Sennheisers is a $900 pair of Neumanns that upstairs neighbor has, Chris. And wow, that's it. It can really drive those too. Those are only about 100 ohm resistance. These are 300. So there's a bit of difference just in the physicality of it. And for someone asking, sorry, I didn't mention the headphone cables. You've got either an RCA or a proper. Come on, brain, where is it? 8 to 3.5 millimeter. So
3.5. I was gonna say phono. The phono one is the larger one, but
yeah, so you can do phono or you can do 3.5. So yeah, it comes with an adapter. It's USB-C on the back. So if you've got a Thunderbolt machine, I'm interested to see if maybe it would sound a little bit better. I don't know that it really will. And yeah, no, I'm just glad that they sent these over. It's been a long time since I've had a chance to listen to music on tubes, because I really do like it.
But enough about audio.
Enough about audio. What about Pharoh? So this is a new Total War game.
Yeah.
And the thing about Total War trying to come out with a new game right now is that they did something absolutely insane with Warhammer, where all 3 games are now one game, which is kind of crazy. And it's ridiculously broad, and so it's sort of hard to pry people away from it. And then the other problem is that Creative Assembly has done so many of these. They span from, the very ancient history, Rome and such, through to the colonization of North America and the Napoleonic Wars, with just about everything in between, in a vast variety of different locations, like Shogun. So how do you make a new Total War game? So what they've done is go back to the Bronze Age, which means that you've got very limited troops. There are literally 4 factions you can play, and the southern factions are more spearmen and archers, and the northern faction a little more sword and axe and club plus shield with a bit of archers. Now, eventually you're going to get chariots, but this goes back to one of the older ones, like Rome to an extent, although with the Marius Revolution, all of a sudden there were neat troops, but more medieval in the beginnings of a campaign, where the difference between one set of swordsmen and another is not big, but there is one is slightly better at one thing and one is slightly better at another thing. And so it's really micromanaging the battles to be able to get a little bit of terrain advantage, put one of your basic troops against another one of against one of the AIs that you have a slight advantage, and that's how you win, because it just keeps the battles go. Apparently, they're pretty tough back in the Bronze Age. Like, if you run away from battle, you're pretty much dead anyways. So why not stick around and just fight out the battle? And because some of the lower tier troops are relatively cheap, the AI likes to spam them, and you will be surprised by how many armies that they come out with. To add on to that, they've added a whole new resource management where when you're building buildings, instead of just throwing out whatever currency it is, you also have to build stone and you have to build wood. And so each of the buildings do that, plus a workforce. And the workforce builds up over time in your settlement, except as it does, so if you're going to build something, it needs 3 idle workforce. So you got to wait until you have 3 idle workforce. But the nice thing about idle workforce is they contribute to unhappiness. So your cities are, as they get larger and as you're waiting to be able to build more and more things, also become unhappier. And there aren't many buildings that can actually fix unhappiness to the amount that you want. So you get to deal with a lot of revolutions and such. It's kind of a very different take on what we've been having for the last couple of Total Wars. There's enough new, when you first walk into it, it's like, yeah, this is just Total War, whatever. After about 5 or 10 turns, you get the whole idea that they're doing a cyclical thing, because the Nile runs on a cycle where it goes from the floods and then the floods recede and you've got fertile soil to grow your crops, and then the floods come back and you've got no food at all, pretty much. And so they do that sort of thing with missions and with a variety of court intrigues with specific benefits that each faction can get, to a point where fairly early in the game you have to pick between which of 4 focuses you're going to do for your entire civ. So you could actually replay these four complete different ways. One way you choose to do monument building. Hey, monuments give your civilization a huge amount of benefits, but everyone else wants them, so you've got to maintain garrisons to stop them from taking them. To if you want to be war focused, then there is one that lets you essentially pick a capital that you're going to attack and give it negatives and you positives for when you eventually do attack it. It's interesting enough that if you're bored with whatever you're doing right now in Total War, I would recommend it. There's enough going that eventually once you get into it, you are, okay, I'll just do one more turn. And some of the scenery is absolutely gorgeous. A little bit better looking than I've seen in some of the other Total War games. On the other hand, if you were fully enjoying whatever Total War you're playing at the time, I don't know, I'd hold off, wait and see. There are some AI problems. If you are sieging a city and you just sort of stand at, I totally forgot weather. Thank you for flashing that up. That is the other brand new thing they brought into this. The only thing that Total War has done similar to this was back in Medieval 2 when they let you do the night battles. And so you came in with torches and there were a lot of different things. You didn't have as much line of sight, but you were pretty obvious. On the other hand, you could ambush people pretty nicely. So in this, you're in Egypt. So sandstorms not only make it so that you can't shoot your arrows as far, doesn't slow you down, it also slows you down, and you're taking damage constantly. Do you bargain to wait and hope that the weather changes before you attack, or no? Because, hey, if you're outmatched by another group of people that are huge archers, well, hey, maybe that sandstorm is actually better for you. Same with rainstorms. Excessive heat means everyone gets tired. So there is enough in it to make it unique if you are bored with what you're playing right now. If you're quite happy with your Warhammer, I don't know. I'd sort of hold off on it for now. It's entertaining, but I hate to say it, as much as I love Total War, it's sort of getting to a point where it's like, what can you do now? Except, Medieval 3, which would be amazing.
It is time for picks of the week. Josh, please get us started.
This is so shocking. I know you're going to be shocked by this pick. After Intel released their next generation stuff and after my personal experiences with the CPU, yes, it's the Ryzen 7 7800X3D. It is an excellent all-around CPU. I mean, yeah, you don't get as many threads as you will with other options out there. But if you're not doing something that, requires all those threads, this still is great. I mean, 16 threads, and you've got not just 32 megs of L3 cache, but another 64 megs on top of that for a whopping 96 megs of L3. And, it's rated at 120 watts, and it appears to stay just kind of right around there. That's the one thing about, slapping that L3 cache on top of the chip. They have to be a lot more sensitive about where they heat up that chip, because obviously that cache is going to kind of fail if it gets too hot underneath there, because it's producing not only its own heat, but it's transmitting the heat from the CPU underneath it to the heat spreader and then heat sink. So, yeah, no, it just works great in pretty much everything. And if you do any kind of games, and that is your primary focus, the 7800X3D is really the best overall chip that you can buy. And now it has a fairly mature platform to be in, and it doesn't have nearly the issues that we saw in the past year. Now, AMD, I feel that they have fixed it with their motherboard partners quite well.
I was going to pick it, but I'm also sad because it's not $350 anymore. $384.
I know, it was
a good price.
last week. It was $350. Now it's back up to $384. So keep a watch out for more specials. I think there may have been a little bit of a run on them in this past week, especially after today. That probably some people who are sitting on the fence just waiting to see what exactly the 14th gen would deliver. And sadly, the answer is
14th
not
gen,
much.
it delivered a higher number, which looks better when you're speccing out a PC on a website. Like, but this is
It does.
14th gen. Okay.
Oh,
6 gigahertz.
It's not really a consumer
No.
product.
I bet that we will be seeing some really good prices on 13600Ks very soon, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is an excellent
And
gaming solution for sure.
It is, and I think the 600 is, yes, I own two 900 series, but I think the 600 is really the sweet spot for the majority of gamers if you're going Intel. The 600 series, it's six performance cores, really all you need for 99.9% of games out there. They don't use power. They're easy to cool. So, and I've the 12600K has been under $200 for a couple of months now. I think we'll see 13600s there very soon.
That was our rebuttal from the Intel fan on the podcast.
It's not a rebuttal. I'm just saying, if you have to go Intel, that's where
If you have to go Intel.
be.
Okay, if you have DDR4 memory and you're saying, I bought 64 gigs of this stuff. I'm not upgrading to DDR5. Intel, even with 14th gen, you can throw that on a motherboard with DDR4. So there's the appeal right there.
I guess.
Save money on memory, I guess, even though DDR5 has gotten a lot cheaper. Jeremy, your pick of the week.
Oh, this is not necessarily a physical pick, but it is utterly hilarious, but not quite worthy of a story. 2 years ago, the American FCC implemented Stir Shaken, which was a color ID authentication technology, which was supposed to stop the robocalls like Josh had earlier tonight. And so they've not bothered in the last couple of years to even enforce it in any way, shape, or form. But they did go back and make sure that every one of the telecom companies that contacted them did at least submit a plan as to how they were going to implement Stir Shaken. And they received such wonderful things as a Windows printer test page, a picture of what looks like leather, somebody their
slide deck, a slide deck from the company's Marcom communications. Yeah.
So this is the plan that was submitted to the FCC about how they were going to implement Stir Shaken and prevent robocalls from happening. Another one just provided a certification from Harvard Business Services Incorporated.
Blank pages were submitted. single like signature pages, and some were just nonsensical pictures of random objects.
Yes, from a small tech or a small telco company in Alberta up here in Canada, they got a fax with the company's business address on it, and that was it. Literally, there's one that says, "Unfortunately, we do not have such documents," and that was their application, and so they've been happily spamming you for the last 2 years. But as amusing as this all is, it does mean that all of these providers are going to no longer be able to access the American telco system because they're going to get blocked. So maybe, just maybe, our robocalls will go down a little bit, which would be nice.
They've given them a reprieve, though, Jeremy. They're allowing them to resubmit. It just wish that sometimes I just wish the law was the law. In this case, it was like, you know what? The law says we can cut you off. However,
it's been 2 years since the law said you can cut them off.
Just block and ask questions later. Let them pay a huge fine and then a fee to reapply, and just make a load of dough off of this.
Wait, just unleash Sylvester Stallone on him.
Oh, we could do that.
I am the law.
I am so used to the Canadian robocalls, though. You know, what would I do without them?
Maybe you can help them make a plan that sounds good but doesn't actually do anything.
Brett, maybe you could pick something instead of something.
What? I think that I will.
Your pick this week, please.
I think there's a number of people out there who really wanted a fully programmable living room remote. And the high end of that market was the Harmony remote, and that was done by Logitech. Unfortunately, Logitech is exiting this space. There's still Harmonies out there, but the support is going to be dying off.
Again.
Sorry, Jeremy, go. What? Oh, again.
Again.
But anyway,
the support was key because you have to be able to put that new device into the Harmony or else it won't understand which input the receiver has to be on.
No, I'm pretty sure the Harmony is the third time that they said, we promise we won't abandon it this time.
And yet they are definitely exiting this market. So what is a couch commander to do? There is a few options out. There are a few options out there. One of them is this device that was kickstarted. It's called the Sofa Baton. There's a couple different versions of it. One that does not have essentially a retransmitter and one that does. And they range in price from about $60 to about $180 or so. The second link is the one with the retransmitter that's more fully programmable. They've come with different screens. They have an interface to your phone. They work off of the web that you can program them. They will interface with common devices in the home, like Alexa's devices. This is kind of like the last way to do this in a fully programmable way. The prices aren't as high as the original Harmonies were. I'm going to try one of these myself just to see how far I can get with it. This is definitely kind of like the last retreat for people who want to be able to program and work all of their devices from their couch. It's IR, it's Bluetooth, it's Wi-Fi. So there's ways to interface with Apple TV and I'm sorry, go ahead, Josh.
Do you know that was developed in Boca Raton?
No, I didn't actually.
Okay,
You've heard of this, the Sofa Baton?
No, I'm lying.
Sofa Baton?
I didn't know. Sofa Baton.
Sofa Baton from Boca Raton. Yeah, anyway.
It was a Kickstarter
can I
project.
offer you something different?
Please do.
Completely different?
Do you remember Ryan's, what was it called, Couchmaster?
Yes. That was at MSI?
I can't remember. No, it was the big plank that had two cushions.
Did he have an ironing board and then he replaced it with this Corsair thing? Or was it Logitech?
Let's be serious.
But what you do is just get a Couchmaster and glue your remotes to it. And so all your remotes can be in one place. You just put that on your lap.
True. You will never lose them if they're all glued to a board.
consumer
Yeah,
electronics
laptop.
control has reached
And the
a point
nerdy tech coachmaster.
for a lot of people where you kind of don't need more than one remote. My wife is perfectly capable of turning on everything and turning everything off with the Apple TV remote because the receiver turns on and it's on the correct input automatically. And there's a sleep button on the Apple TV remote. When she presses that, it turns off the receiver. And, I did have it turning on the TV and turning it off too at one point, but there was an issue there. So I ended up turning that off on the TV itself.
Actually, I have a specific problem with my particular layout that this style of remote could solve for me with a couple of macros in turning. Most of my switching actually is pretty good. The receiver pass through kind of works automatically depending on which input I'm doing. I agree with you. That's actually a good call. Certain power on, power off could use a little sequencing.
That's the tough thing about the Harmony, and I had one. I still have it somewhere in a box, but it became difficult. And my friend who tried to set his wife up with one also had the same issue where there's a certain amount of commitment you have to holding the remote kind of steady so it can send all of its commands out.
Yeah,
you can't just
because
point at the TV and hit
macro.
start because the receiver didn't turn on this time. Well, you didn't hold it long enough for the TV and the receiver to turn on.
Because you're sending 5, 6, 7 commands at once.
That's where I didn't have a repeater. If I'd had one of those, IR repeaters pointed down to the other devices, and it would have been a lot smoother. But
that's why the more expensive version of the Sofa Baton comes with a repeater, so you can just keep, just whatever with it.
I get it,
it's the
and I totally understand. But it's not 2000 anymore. This pretty much has been fixed by consumer electronics control. It doesn't work with everything.
Mostly.
And the PS5 still likes to go battle the Apple TV for control.
Yes.
It'll flip back and forth between the Apple TV and PS5 input. So I finally just turned off CEC on the PS5. But other than weird issues like that, I can hit the volume up button on anything and it turns up the receiver volume. They can change channels.
That's not. I wish that was the case in my house, but it's not.
Do you have
Maybe
cable
it's my
or
receiver.
satellite TV that's provided by something other than a streaming service?
I do have cable, but I watch it through an app.
Okay, so it can be an app on an Apple TV.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or
I feel like
Roku.
I feel like it's complicated when people have that dedicated Comcast or some other box, because those things are so antiquated that.
No, I got rid of the box years ago.
Yeah, see, in the YouTube chat, Uninfluenceable says, modern Onkyo and Integra receivers have perfect CEC integration. I only need the Apple TV remote. Even after I turn on the Xbox controller, the receiver changes inputs for me. Yes, it's amazing how good it works. Something about the Apple TV, too. The remote seems to...
True. But my current Yamaha needs just a little bit of help. It mostly does the switching great, but if I just could consolidate just a couple of functions and just get rid of all the remotes that aren't needed and just say, here's one remote, that'd be great.
Just do what the cool people do and just have a living room PC with a keyboard and mouse on the coffee table.
Yep, that makes sense.
I'm
okay.
really surprised at how little pushback I've received for doing this. I have a full size. Yes, I have a full size keyboard and mouse wireless on the IKEA coffee table, and the 11th gen Nook Extreme with a 3060 or something in it. It's small enough that it fits in this little nook. It fits in a nook in the cabinet, and that's connected to the TV. So I switch over to the PC input and just do computer stuff on the living room TV, and it's glorious.
So, do you know what really blows my hair back?
Nothing.
Memorex?
There's so many answers there.
Memorex does.
Wait, what hair?
The base Couchmaster is $150.
This is a real product?
Yes.
Did you not? Oh yeah, I posted it.
Couchmaster? What?
The Couchmaster.
Okay, I'm going to Nerdy Tech.
Oh my god.
yeah.
My god.
Yeah, the
This is
Couchmaster is
real.
real.
It's
Couchmaster
real.
Psycon and the Psypunk.
Oh my god.
Okay, valid
With
point.
someone else.
Valid point in the chat that streaming services, the resolution when you're watching on a browser is lower. That's true. But browser streaming sucks.
That's true. It does.
Other than YouTube, I don't know what the other services. It's just
come
not the
on.
same.
Do you not like the old 80s arcade interface for typing in what you're searching for?
That's death.
I just use voice for everything with the Apple TV remote, like a normal person.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay,
More picks.
Kent, your pick of the week.
So, normally I try to stay for something that is a little lower price. That's a really good deal. This item's not really cheap by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a really good deal right now, especially with modern graphics cards able to push higher resolutions to higher speeds all the time. This is actually $10 less than it was when I picked it 2 hours ago. This is a full QD OLED ultra wide 3440 by 1440, 175 hertz Samsung monitor. Normally it's $1,500. It's $989 right now. I mean, there's really not much more to say than QD OLED, 175 hertz, full adaptive sync, 0.03 millisecond response time gray to gray.
Yeah, because it's OLED.
It's OLED.
If you want the best response times, don't play around with LCD. You want that OLED.
But you're saying my plasma TV's got slow response time?
Or, if you just, we interact with our games via keyboards and mice, but, our primary interaction interface with our games is the monitor. If the monitor looks better, you're going to be happier until you die in the game. But, you're going to be happy looking at OLED, especially a high quality one like this. Somebody
in the chat instantly, Razer, OLED burn-in. They're never going to get away from the stigma. It's going to take a generation. It's not an iPhone 15, okay, people? That one has terrible burn-in, by the way. Terrible.
Oh my gosh, it does.
Yeah.
It's a good thing I don't have one.
Yeah. I think that'll do it. I think that's our show. It's after midnight on the East Coast as we record this, and it's time for bed. I mean, people have to get up in the morning, take kids to work, take kids to school. There's take kids to work days.
It's take your daughter to work day, I guess, right?
That's every day.
Get on that
leave her there
cheesy.
for 8 hours. No, that's not happening. I'm taking my son to school in the morning, and that's all.
He's not going to learn how to run benchmarks at school.
He shows so little interest in what I do. It's really not even funny. Yeah, he doesn't care about the hardware stuff. Something will come in the mail. I'm like, hey, Julian, guess what this is? He's like, a video card. I'm like, yeah. And the other day when the 14th gen stuff came in, there was a box on the table. I'm like, guess what this is? And he stares down and he sees the Intel logo. He's like, a processor. Like, yeah. And then I took it downstairs. It was the end of our conversation about it.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking. My youngest son, who I thought would be most into computers, he plays Rocket League, and as long as it plays Rocket League, he doesn't care. Though my other kid, he did buy his own motherboard and storage, and I helped him upgrade that. So getting some interest in there, and it's trying to keep him.
My son's only 8, so maybe as he gets older.
It took a while. It took until he was 21 before he was interested in doing his own computer stuff.
Have him help you build one or something, maybe.
I have.
Oh, you have? I haven't successfully gotten him interested in doing that yet.
Yeah. Has he decided that girls aren't yucky yet? Are girls still yucky?
He's just not. He doesn't seem to have much of a interest in socializing with them. But I don't think he thinks
Okay.
they're yucky either.
So in about 5 years, that will change.
No, okay. When
then-
he was
and then-
assigned, there were 3 options for his second grade teacher when he was assigned, whichever one it was. I was like, we got the name, and I'm like, oh, what do you think of your teacher? I don't know which one you wanted. He's like, well, I got the prettiest one. So I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's
okay.
all that matters.
All right, then.
So apparently, yeah, he has preferences already.
So in about 5 years, all that will matter to him until he's about 35.
You think it stops at 35? Okay.
No, somehow.
No, but
Yeah.
It slows down a bit.
It slows down a bit after marriage. Let's face it.
Wouldn't
All right.
that- that'd
Can I have an
exceed your Canadian
outro
content,
from
though.
somebody? Kent, Josh,
Sure.
Kent.
It's a great time to buy computer hardware right now. There's some great products on the market. A little more expensive than they used to be, but it's a good time for gaming. Unfortunately, we do need to say good luck and send our best wishes to Gordon,
Aye.
who it's been announced that he's in treatments for cancer. So, Gordon, if you watch or you hear about it, good luck, man. We wish you the best. And everybody out there, the same thing. Good luck.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, on a serious note, yes, Gordon Mung from Maximum PC and PC World and a legend in the
other
PC
things.
community is battling cancer. So that sucks, obviously.
Never had the opportunity to meet him, but he seems like a really damn good guy and a genuine person.